Good evening. Happy Monday, everybody. And yeah, we got a new Pope. We got a new Pope in four ballots. And I, for one, am excited to see what he's going to get into. As you might imagine, I was at work on Thursday when the news of the white smoke went out. I was actually in the middle of composing an email to all the priests of our diocese, telling them what to do when the new pope was elected, um, and a couple of the bishop's directives. So I finished that email up real quickly because I wasn't really expecting four ballots. I thought it was going to take a little bit longer, but as it happens, that is not what happened. And then I had a very interesting experience there. My area, the white smoke went out about 11:10 in the day, and I had a mass at the pastoral center scheduled for 11:30. And one of the directives that I sent out was that each priest in our diocese bishop wants you to offer a mass of thanksgiving and prayer for the election of the new pope. And here's the mass at the back of the Roman Missal that you can use on any weekday. And so I decided I was just going to go for that and offered up that massive prayer for the new Roman pontiff without knowing his name. And, I remember very clearly from Francis's election that you get the white smoke and then there's 40 to 50 minutes between the white smoke and learning anything useful. So, and I actually did have some people show up to that mass. But what made it very interesting to celebrate that mass is that I was praying for the Pope without knowing what his name was. And at various points throughout that mass, especially, you would insert the Pope's name, and I didn't know it yet, but I figured that God knew who I was talking about, and he'd be able to figure it out. And I was sitting in our chancellor's office, and we watched Pope Leo come out on the balcony and be announced and all of that with our bishop too. And all of us were surprised to see an American. And the bishop commented that he had spent the last 2 weeks telling every reporter that asked him that we would never have an American pope. That would just be unheard of. As far as I could tell, Bishop Barrett went around saying the same thing. So my bishop was in good company. Yeah, and so then we all got to have that reaction of, okay, really, who is this guy? It wasn't one of the front runners and one of the known characters. This guy doesn't seem to write a book every year and go around on podcasts and give lots and lots of talks. He seems, as far as I know, to be a fellow who quietly attends to his work. And I had an opportunity to hop onto Jacob's channel and to go onto his live stream. I hope to calm him down a little bit. And that was an interesting thing to note that Jacob found his Twitter page, his very poorly followed Twitter page, immediately and jumped to conclusions there. And you can bet with a very high degree of certainty that Twitter page was not the basis for the Cardinals electing and their decision making process. I bet you fully half of them would be incapable of manning Twitter themselves. So it was not their number one thing. So I was also a little disappointed to see some people immediately freaking out and jumping to conclusions, not just Jacob, but also people who should know better, people who are Catholics, jumping to conclusions on social media. And, let's actually wait for him to do something before we decide what we think of what he's doing, because we have to be able to discern what's actually going on rather than project there. All right, Pastor Paul says that social media is for jumping, and especially Twitter, and yeah, that's why I'm not on it. So thank you for backing me up on that. So all in all, very happy to have the Pope. Very happy to have been there to witness it. Very happy that he is, a White Sox fan. Somebody else from the AL Central there. And the White Sox have handed us Twins fans many wins over the years. So very excited to see what's going to go on. Ron says, congrats on the new boss. Thank you. None of us thought it would be Bob. I don't think I would have called him Bob unless he gave me permission. But yeah. We've got the link posted, and I'd be happy to talk to any of you who are similarly excited about the new Pope. Of course, Andrew's probably sitting there, and he's thinking, why do I need to go to Rome for a Pope? We have a Pope at home.
Has it been, Father Eric?
It's been good. It's been good. I have been as I said, very happy to start trying out. It's a little bit difficult for a priest because we say the Pope's name every time we celebrate Mass, and I've got to turn off 5 years of training to just say Francis or Francisco and say either Leo or Leone, depending on what language I'm saying Mass in. So you kind of got to hold back and reprogram yourself. But it's nothing like priests who had 25 years of John Paul. So if they could do it, so can I.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you ever slip up if you're in the Mass and you say the wrong Pope's name, just because of habit? I haven't had time to get into any bad habits. This will be the first, my first opportunity to slip up and actually say the wrong name. But it was very difficult, at that part of the Mass when it's a vacant see. You just don't say anything because there's no Pope to pray for at that point. Wow. It is really difficult not to just keep on cooking through on autopilot and just say, for Francis our Pope and John our Bishop. But I've gotten words right out of my mouth, be like, he's with God. He's not technically the Pope anymore. The office is vacant. So Neil probably witnessed this himself. That slip up happens all the time. So we'll see, and it happens. Oops. Try not to do it again. That's as bad as it gets.
No, I thought priests were perfect, Father. That they were extra human.
What do you mean, Mark? They're not? What do you, Mark? We got a problem here.
Why would your assumption be to ask the question?
You said
that's silly. Of course, people make mistakes. They're people. Perfection is not required at all. That's why the Catholics have more tools. Protestants need perfection because they ain't got no tools. That's the problem right there.
And we are 30 seconds into Mark on the stream. We've already bashed the Protestants. Thank you,
before we go down that rabbit trail, Father Eric, if last time I talked with you, it was a little while ago, I texted you and you asked my mom's name because I asked you to pray for her. You offered it up and things took a turn for the better. So I don't know for anybody who prayed for my mom. Dudes, double thumbs up. Thank you. So I just had to get that out.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Now back to you, me and you, Mark. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, the Protestants keep yapping their mouth about something they shouldn't care about, know nothing about, and then they're still doing it, and then they wonder why I come in and hammer.
We should have a stop clock.
If you didn't see that coming, I don't know what to tell you about the world.
I'm learning. It's like when I talk to Federici, it's one vibe.
Yeah, no, but see, we used to live in this world where there was this thing. It used to be called politeness, and everybody would just be happy for the other person, irrespective of their disagreement. And we have lost that in the world. And it really shows. Like we had that when I was younger. Like we had that. And it's gone. Everyone's just asking really, it's pernicious. And I don't necessarily think it's conscious in all cases, right? But it's pernicious in that when people are asking questions that are disrespectful questions. Like we're living in a world where nobody thinks that's a thing. And I'm like, it's absolutely a thing. And when I was growing up, you would never do that. And you would be told otherwise. And people would flat out not answer you and stuff.
Right. Yeah, sure.
I'm happy to hear from Pastor Paul that most of us Protestants are happy for the Catholics and praying for their new Pope, which is the normal reaction that I've gotten from most people.
I would hope that were true, but my goodness,
one of the guys
know that.
One of the guys at the gym, we were talking about the possibility of Cardinal Pizza Balla, and I told him that dish means pizza dance, and he thought that would have been the best thing ever to have Pope Pizza Dance. So he comes in and says, congratulations on the new Pope. I'm sorry it's not Pizza Dance, but we got a guy from Chicago, so that's pretty good, So that was as far as that conversation really needed to go.
Well, Father, let me ask you the important question that everybody actually needs to know the answer to. How long before the Pope actually rules on whether or not deep dish is the new official pizza, and the Italians are like out? Like, is he going to keep the status quo where the one true pizza is Italian New York style?
So here's the place where you need to go make a theological argument, Mark, is you need to argue that the manner in which you eat your pizza is a matter of faith or morals. Because that's the only thing that the Pope has jurisdiction to teach infallibly over.
No, that I can argue because I have way more than 20 years of professional pizza eating experience. So if we're talking pizza theology, then I'm definitely a theologian. If we're talking any other kind of theology, then I haven't spent 20 years in a monastery, so probably not.
Do you have to fold? Do Chicagoans, do they have to fold the pizza?
No, it's dish. It's dish pizza.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's deep dish. That. I do like that.
That's why this is important, Ron. Come on.
The fold is the best part. The fold is by far the best part.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
those Italian pizza lovers.
Yeah.
This is
you get like a full mouthful of the pizza, and it's not all tomato. It's not all tomato like some pizzas.
Everybody knows the Greeks make the best pizzas, but I'll let you peasants argue it out. I'm a pizza theologian now, so.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to say that there's actually serious points against the Chicago deep dish pizza. It seems to be more apt for gluttony than a regular deep dish pizza, other types of pizza, just because I don't know. So I'm a fast eater. Mark can verify this.
Yes.
And in my head, it's like, oh yeah, I can eat 4 or 5 slices of pizza, no problem. I won't even notice that, And then I'll attempt to do that with a Chicago deep dish, and 4 or 5 slices of Chicago deep dish should probably put you into a coma, because that's a lot of cheese and a lot of bread right there.
Yeah,
more than probably one man should be doing it. So I would actually say that we've got points against the deep dish because it might more frequently be an occasion of gluttony for the faithful.
I'm personally a partisan for New York style.
Yeah, and I'm representing Detroit style pizza. I'm the apostle of Detroit style pizza to the internet.
I think New York style is the best. It's so versatile. You can fold it. You can eat it, flat. I mean, I think New York style is great.
And I think Chicago deep dish is commonly eaten with a fork.
Yeah.
So it's a pizza pie. It is a regular pizza pie.
Yeah, it's a pizza pie. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody who eats pizza with the fork, but I could imagine that with Chicago deep dish style.
Yeah. Yeah, you really got to go at it. So I think not even
this
Pastor
nonsense?
Paul.
Well, I didn't know either. I'm glad someone asked. What is it? Please.
Can we
It's
even
square.
entertain people? Like this
Listen,
square.
girl.
It's got a really nice crispy crust on it. It's not necessarily going to have a separated layer of cheese and sauce and toppings. It's a little all kind of mixed up together. And I delighted in it frequently when I was a student in Detroit. Videos of the Pope's brothers are touching and hilarious. I guess Ixnan's coming in with the other side. Would Chicago-style pizza fill you up before you eat too much? That is also a possibility for us to consider. The papal theologians are going to have to debate this one out, and it's probably going to go to a commission for like a solid 10 years before they're able to give a recommendation to the Pope.
Yeah, I need a ruling, man. We got to have a ruling on this.
In the absence of any official ruling, or any official law giving you guidance, or any even reliable tradition, because it's such a debated point amongst theologians, you're free to believe as you want.
Okay.
I wonder what Pizzaballa would have said if he became Pope.
Look, it's all about the Greek pizza then. I can confirm. That's good news. Good news.
Yeah. So that's what I know. I also know that he's a canonist, which is what I asked for. I specifically requested a canon lawyer Pope. So thank God.
The second American canon lawyer Pope coming soon, Father. We're working diligently.
We're working on it.
We've already opened the door by getting the first American Pope. So that was job one. That was job one.
So what will the canonist be? He's basically knows the doctrine inside.
So the Catholic Church has the oldest continuously functioning legal system in the world. And he got a degree that makes him an expert and capable of serving as a judge in other various roles in that legal system. He got one of the same degrees that I'm getting, although he went all the way and got the doctorate, whereas I'm just getting the licentiate. So instead of calling me doctor, you can call me your licentiousness.
Like your licentiousness. That sounds bad. That sounds like I'm cussing at you.
The minute you graduate, Father, it's done. Why are you gonna make the Calvinists sit down there forever?
Yeah. And the cool thing about being a canon lawyer is during academic processions, you get to wear a cassock and a cape with green lining and a beretta with green palm on it. So, and I think the green looks really sharp, way sharper than the red for theology. So that's one of the things I'm excited about, because God bless him, even when he did things that I approved of. So 2015, the year of mercy. I'm sure we all remember that, right? Pope Francis decides that he's going to give faculties to hear confession to all of the priests in the SSPX who are canonically irregular and, 7/8 the way to schism with the Catholic Church and the Pope. He decides he's just going to give these guys, by his own authority, faculties to hear confessions validly, rather than shooting blanks every time that they try and do that. But the document by which he did that had like the fuzziest and like least precise language that you could imagine. And like you kind of know what he was getting at and something that he wanted to. And he had canonists working for him. Just like, draft me a couple of articles that do what I want, and I'll just slap it in the document with everything else that I've written. It's not hard. So just the lack of attention to those sorts of details made people in my line of work a little bit frustrated, got us extra work to do. And somebody with a level of attention to those details is certainly going to make me happy.
It's so funny though. You give the SSPX guys whatever confession stuff, but it's not to the level of specificity that they like. It'll be wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful. Just wonderful.
You guys can hear confessions or something. I don't know. I'm the Pope.
A little bit nicer than that, but it was a little bit funny. How you doing, Pastor Paul?
Good. I have a question, then I have to leave. Why does the first papal address happen in Italian?
Because he's the Pope of Rome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
you can, if you remember the broadcast, they were just like they announced the guy's name, and everybody in St. Peter's Square are kind of like, who? You know, versus if they had said pizza pala or zuppi or Perolin, you know, and said an Italian name, they would have all lost their minds because they'd finally gotten an Italian Pope back. They wouldn't have really cared who it was. So, yeah, I mean, something that I am continuously reminded of is the fact that Rome is in Italy, and we just have to deal with the scandal of the particularity there. So
I heard he was the Bishop of Rome or something.
Yeah.
Well, but he's not just that, obviously. And it was interesting this year too, because I would assume this was the most watched via the internet. This was the most watched. What's the official word for sort of the presentation? Is there an official word for that?
I don't know one. It's just his election and announcement, and first the Urbi et Orbi address. That's what it'd be, to the city and to the world.
Okay. So I would imagine this was the most watched. Maybe it wasn't, maybe mass media, but it's been very interesting how invested non-Catholics and nominal Catholics have been into this. That's been very interesting to watch.
It's a good show. Like, we get so tired of our own politics where it's just like we're gonna dive into all of the details of Donald Trump's personal life, and we're going to, you know, make that like the tabloid, and you just kind of sick of that, versus sending 133 guys into a room, telling them to go make the sausage and don't come out until it's done. You know, like that's just a better system right there. I don't want to know how you guys do it.
It's uncertain world, and it's the same force behind the rise of Peterson and the meaning crisis and all that. It's the same trend line at the end of the day, is that now people are realizing that as they look across, they're seeing more and more chaos, and so they've got to have somewhere else to look. And unfortunately, a lot of them are looking down, as always, but more and more are looking up. And so this is completely expected, at least by me. I was like, well, yeah, more people are looking up, more people are paying attention to ethereal things, we'll call them. And so more people will pay attention to this as the result. And that's pretty much what happened. And the thing that's been sort of puzzling is the amount of people will say commenting and doing ridiculous things like applying the rules of American governance politics, which is not the European conception of the word politics at all, to something like this, which is, it's just bizarre, right? So you have, billions of people and an election by 133 people for their head. You would think that would be a hint, and no one's understanding it yet. Like no one sort of gets the message about, whoa, doesn't this work much better? Yeah, it kind of does. And wouldn't the rules of like popularity and pro-felicity, as you like to call it, and other things apply? No, of course they wouldn't. How could they? At least not in the same way, because it's not that many people, right? And it's an elite club, right? It's a real hierarchical affair where the top of the hierarchy determines the head of the top of the hierarchy, and everyone's happy about it below. They're submitted.
And I noticed this, right? So even back in 2013, I was noticing the things. And I was noticing that like every reporter and every journalist and talking head would come out with like here's so-and-so, and here's the reasons why he's going to be the next pope. And even back then, I was like, some of them, like I read this one article, and it was an intelligent enough article about why Cardinal Dolan was going to be the next pope. And I was like, he'd probably do fine, but and then this time around, I was like, unless you can actually get a beat on what those 133 guys are talking about, you're not going to know what's going on and not going to know what's coming. And so I wasn't shocked. I was a little surprised, but not shocked when he walked out there and was announced, because I had listened to the Pillar podcast, and those guys, because they don't have any journalistic training, are actually really good reporters. And they figure out, hey, you don't chase after the Cardinals with a phone while they're on their way to lunch. They're not going to tell you anything useful after the general congregations. What you do is you talk to the guys who drove them there and see if they've heard anything. Offer them a cigarette. And like, hey, who were the Cardinals talking about while you were driving them, right? That's how you do journalism in the Catholic Church right there.
Well, not just journalism. I mean, this is what Nassim Taleb talks about in his books. Like, if you want to know an area, you talk to the taxi drivers. That's who you talk to. And if you anything about an area, the political situation, see it, Paul. Political situation, the economic situation, anything, you talk to the taxi drivers. They're the ones with the info.
Could I?
What about Uber drivers? Does that count too?
Who knows?
I have a question.
Sure, Andrew.
Yeah. So I was watching the latest John Bergsma podcast, thingamajig, or whatever. Okay. And he started talking about like indulgences and whatnot, and like those like slips of paper or whatever.
Oh, we don't do the slips of paper anymore. We accidentally created the world's first paper currency. It wasn't good.
So like, I get the whole, give to the church, and that's like a good deed, and it's like, hey, the sin, maybe it's not as bad.
It's basically, I don't know, this is going to sound a little bit irreverent, I suppose, but it's kind of a way to gamify the things that the pastors would like you to be doing. Right. So like you turn it into a little bit of a game. It's like, oh, you could get this indulgence, right? And like if you get the indulgence, that knocks time off of purgatory. How much? We don't really comment on how much anymore. It's just trust us, it'll work. And you got to get these criteria met, and if you do all of that, then you'll get the indulgence. So it's really just like a little way to gamify works of piety and asceticism for people in order to actually kind of get them to do it, because they might not do it just because it's good for them, but if you gamify it, they might do it. And like, this is a trick that we can use over and over again. You could look at the way that Duolingo runs, where they put you in a league with a bunch of strangers, and whoever gets more experience points during the week, the top ones get to go to the higher league. Everybody else gets to stay put, and the bottom ones, they go to the lower. Like all of these little, it's kind of like that. We want you to pray the rosary more, so we'll attach an indulgence to it. We want you to make pilgrimages, so we'll attach an indulgence to it. And these things, these spiritual means, if they're done with a sincere heart, they will actually sanctify you. They're good things, right? And with all the plenary indulgences, you always have the condition of going to confession and receiving communion attached to it.
Yeah.
Which is maybe the thing that we really actually want you to do, is to go to confession, because if you haven't been in a while, it's time for you to go get your soul cleaned up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on indulgences. I hope that's not turning anybody off on it, but
I didn't even know I didn't know that. I'm not being sarcastic. I didn't know they even existed anymore. You know what I mean? Like if you can give me, I can Google it, so can you tell a Protestant guy what this is? Because I thought that was an ancient part of the past.
Sure. Sure, yeah. So basically, you've got two types. You've got partial indulgence and a plenary indulgence. Partial indulgence just kind of says that you get a certain amount of time off purgatory, and you won't. We're not going to calculate what that is. That's kind of between you and God, right?
Yeah.
Plenary indulgence, if you meet all of the conditions, and you kind of have to read the fine print on this one, then it will take all of your purgatory time off. You will be straight to heaven. Do not pass code. Do not collect $200. So first thing you got to do is you've got to do the work that has the indulgence attached to it. Got to go to confession within a certain amount of time of doing that indulgence work. You've got to receive Holy Communion. You've got to pray for the intentions of the Roman Pontiff. And by the way, you've got to be free of all attachment to sin.
Okay, no, that's
and then
that's
you'll
cool.
get the full.
I like that quite a bit, actually. That part, I just don't understand what an indulgence is, because I know it's something that got mocked by comedians. But I don't know, like, and I'm not trying to stir a pot, but like, do you give money or I'm asking.
No, I described everything that we do now, and
okay.
the traditional works of satisfaction are prayer, fasting, and almsgiving.
Okay.
And we tried doing the indulgences for almsgiving, and that turned out to create some perverse incentives for people, especially if they didn't understand what the church was going for. So we no longer have any indulgences for almsgiving, only prayer and fasting.
So what is an indulgence? Like, is it so it's like time off?
It is a promise from the church that you will get time off of purgatory. Okay,
but from what I'm hearing is it's not transactional, like here's $5, give me 5 days out of purgatory.
It's not. Right. So if you were to, let's say, fulfill all the conditions externally, but inside your head you're like, bah, this is all just a load of malarkey. This is a bunch of medieval.
No, I'm not going down that. I'm not going down that road.
But I'm giving you an example, right? I'm just doing it all as a joke. Then you'd actually add purgatory time. You wouldn't take any off.
Wah, 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 wah.
So, but you might be able to fool Father Eric. Maybe it happens all the time. I don't know. Certainly happens every time I let a porn bomber on the live stream here. But you can't fool God on these things, and He's the one who actually does the work. We just kind of set the conditions up for it. So
I didn't know why it was called an indulgence, though. It sounds
like, because frankly, you're getting a really good deal out of it. Because like the things that we're doing for indulgences are really not that difficult.
Okay. I'm tracking.
Certainly not like proportionate to.
Gotcha.
The time in purgatory.
You're getting a good deal.
You're getting a good deal on it. Like it's almost like the Lord is behaving indulgently with you.
Okay. No, I got you.
If you clean your room, we'll go to Dairy Queen, right? And it's like, okay, I can clean it in 2 minutes. It's gonna,
All right.
It's not worth 2 minutes of labor, but
there's no money involved, and because I could have Googled this, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be indulgences for almsgiving, and that got bad enough where we just aren't going to do that anymore.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna go clean my room now.
Go clean your room.
That's Peterson.
And then we'll go to Dairy Queen.
You'll get points in Petersonville for cleaning.
Right.
Peterson indulgences. He doesn't have the authority to give indulgences. Just free tickets to his shows. And maybe some merch.
I'll take that.
His tickets ain't cheap.
Yeah, they're not.
Right. Well, good news, eh? There's two great news I can bring. First of all, thank the Lord I'm a Catholic. And I say it with great pride once again. The second thing is I'm up for adoption to any American since So if you're thinking of adopting me, please file your appropriate forms and documents. No, I'm I'm actually glad, pleased about Leo the 14th. What I hear thus far, as you know, I'm a traditional Catholic, and I think he comes across. It's only a few days now, as being a sort of a mediator, and the reason I obviously didn't want to openly rebel is anybody can rebel and leave an organization, a church, and you're just you're just becoming another sect. And I love what he's doing. He's bringing Catholics together. I think he will succeed that, which is a big contrast to Pope Francis, with full respect to him, of course. So I'm very, very happy, and the whole family. I hope you feel the same. I don't know what your opinions are.
Yeah. I mean, so you can kind of see the whole, what we could call maverick tendencies of Pope Francis, like right away when he came out on the balcony and wasn't wearing the red mosetta and the stole, right? And if I was smarter then, I maybe would have noticed it, but I wasn't quite paying attention on that level yet. Because it's like, well, that's the traditional thing that you do is you put the red mosetta on and the very ornate, nice stole, and that's the manner in which you address people. And I talked about this a little bit on Jacob's stream, that there's a real humility in submitting yourself to the traditions and the way things are done here. So every American presidential candidate has to campaign in Iowa, and they have to eat a pork chop on a stick, right? And you know what? If you want to be president of the United States of America, you have to eat the pork chop on the stick, right? Like, that's just the way we do things. Can you represent people in Iowa just as well as people in New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles? I think that's kind of what that little tradition says, is that you can go to the county fair in Iowa and eat the fried food, which these county fairs and state fairs are famous for. So that was kind of like a first indication that Leo the 14th was adopting the centuries-old traditions that had come before him and submitting himself to it, which I think is a real humility there. And I think the whole office of the papacy takes a certain humility to actually live it well on account of how handled everything is for you. And you get to set, certain priorities about, I want to pursue these initiatives. I want to meet with these people. I want to take the time to do this, that, and the other thing. But you spend a lot of time just getting kind of piloted around by other people who are organizing and handling all this, because you can't just pop into a 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee. That's your life is no longer like that. I think that's a promising thing.
The other two small indicators, I don't know whether you noticed, he's moved back in the traditional apartment in the Vatican, papal apartment. And the other thing is his first press conference, and he gave a blessing in Latin, which is back, which I love anyway. That's the two small sort of
beautiful Latin.
Fantastic, yes, just like
Francis kind of mumbled his a little bit.
But I'm pleased, very, very pleased.
Yeah. Hopefully, this was some of the things that I heard on the Pillar podcast, and they were trying to get the inside scoop. Is they wanted broad continuity with Francis, but they also wanted somebody who would be a unifying figure And I think as time goes on, and we'll start to see a real contrast, perhaps even on Twitter. You might be able to observe these things on Twitter, between the people who make money by stoking outrage and the people who maybe just sometimes got angry about things. And the people who if they keep on stoking outrage about the Roman Pontiff, I'd be like, wow, what is it that you're doing here? We got a little bit of audience capture here. We got a little bit of you've got one business model, and that's the only thing that you can do now. So it'll be interesting to see if Taylor Marshall goes back to talking about Thomism rather than constant news commentary, because at one time he was known as a Thomist, right? And then it became a lot of news and commentary. It's like, well, interesting. How about that?
The other thing is the name he chose, Leo. If you look at Leo the 13th, as I understand, he was the first person who's actually commented on the modernist, in other words, industrial society. And we're talking about, 19th century, basically.
Yeah, he kind of created the papacy as we know it these days. Because, the papacy had for a long time also, the two offices of Roman Pontiff and governor of the Papal States were always combined in the same person.
In my mind, what I'm trying to make a connection, first one was talking and being critical of industrial or over-industrialization of Europe. But what's facing us now, being Leo the 14th, is AI problem, which is exponentially, I don't know what's happening. Nobody knows, but it's literally potentially making us all slaves, basically. Potentially, it's like a knife. It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. And
you could do it to
use it.
You could use Claude to do a little bit of quick scripting for you, take a little bit of the busy work out of your day. You could use it to search up information and find it a little more accurately than a regular search engine, or you can use it for all sorts of ridiculous stuff.
I'm guessing. I think his first encyclical will be touching the issues of facing the modern world, which is artificial intelligence. That's my gut feeling.
Intelligence, social media induced insanity, smartphone addiction, the inability of people to have a normal conversation with a stranger, the fact that we went and built our cities around automobile. I mean, you could make a banger of an encyclical out of that. You could probably get it done in 20 pages if you've got a good writer who knows how to be good and concise. And yeah, so
can I talking about the smartphones? I just got mine today. For the very, very first time. My wife and my two sons are going to London, meeting our third son. He lives in London, and my wife is teaching me how to use a phone. There you are.
Well, I'm going to tell you the single most important...
and no watch. I never had a watch.
Yeah. The single most important thing about a phone: there's no such thing as a free app.
Oh yeah, she. What's the thing she installed in there? That chat app. I forget.
WeChat.
WhatsApp.
Yeah. Well, the free one, you can talk all over the world without paying much.
That's WhatsApp. Yeah, that's WhatsApp.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. There you are.
Yeah.
So press this, and this is how you recharge it.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's
yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. Well, good luck. I hope you're able to wield it and not the other way around.
So
I have a question for stories. Hi. So my question is, in prior papal enclaves, what stories does the room have of clear times where God intervened? Like maybe something was going in one direction and then it went in a different direction, or something that, like in retrospect, everyone agrees, oh yeah, that God made this happen or made this other thing not happen.
Yeah.
His name's Leo.
His name's Leo. Leo the First, obviously. So my favorite conclave story was it was sometime in the Middle Ages. I don't know who actually got elected, but the cardinals were all kind of deadlocked, and they couldn't
couple of years, that's right.
come to it. Wasn't quite a couple of years, but I think they were a month into this daggone thing. There were no front runners, and then a dove flew into the Sistine Chapel. It probably wasn't the Sistine Chapel. It probably was someplace else, and landed on one of the cardinals' heads. And the whole College of Cardinals looked at that guy and said, "All right, it's him." And then they went back to home. They went home and like, "You're going to be the guy." To end that legendary 2-year conclave in I can't remember if it was the 13th or early 14th century.
Like that, yeah.
A very holy hermit came down out of the mountains and chastised the cardinals for not being able to come to a decision, and so they just elected him. And by golly, Celestine V, he gave it his all. He tried his best, but a lifetime of prayer and fasting had not prepared him for Italian politics. And so he found himself within 8 months abdicating the throne of Peter. And Boniface VIII got elected after that. So, and Dante hated him. So, and here's one last story. The last time. So, the Holy Roman Emperor used to have veto power over the election of the Roman Pontiff. His legates could veto them. And so the last time that was used, I think that was actually in 1903. They elected somebody, and the Holy Roman Emperor said, "I don't want that guy." And so then they went and elected Pius X. And the first thing that Pius X did when he was elected was he changed the law where the Holy Roman Emperor no longer had, or any sovereigns no longer had any veto power over him. So the very thing that got him elected, he just went and eliminated immediately. So that's what I have for fun conclave stories. You've exhausted my knowledge of that.
Well, thanks. That was good.
I've got a random side note. Who's the last guy who abdicated the throne? What was his?
Celestine V, before Benedict XVI. So
Yeah,
there was like an 800-year gap between abdications. Everybody else died in office.
Yeah, I saw that title, like Pope Emeritus, and I was like, who's the first guy that stepped down, right? Like that must have been a funny situation,
It's usually not a sign that things are going well.
Yeah.
It's incredible responsibility. I mean, just 1.4 billion Catholics, various countries, cultures, languages. Wow.
Yep. Nope. That's why every time we say Mass, we pray for them, because
exactly. That's right.
It's a heavy burden. A heavy burden.
One good thing about Vatican is their diplomacy is just superb.
Yeah. Italians are very good at being diplomatic. They can insult you right to the face, but it just sounds so sweet and amiable when they do it that you actually feel a little bit complimented. That you integralista.
But they can also be Machiavellian in their behavior too.
Yeah, well, that's you get what you get, right?
Exactly.
You never have to wonder what Mark's thinking, and nobody would ever make him a diplomat.
Right. Well, and Machiavelli kind of invented diplomacy in a way, at least in the quote modern sense. Like these things are not coincidences at all. So.
Yeah. So you got the trade-offs with your personality types there. If you're really good at being diplomatic, you might begin to think that you can run the world with diplomacy, and please everyone. And there's a time and place for everything.
Bismarck's idea of diplomacy or politics was the art of the possible. And I think that's a good definition.
Yeah. The world that we were talking about earlier today. I'm gonna do a video on that actually. That's
on Bismarck and the culture.
Yeah.
Ooh,
the first culture war.
That with, no, 100%. Really interesting. You gonna do that with Master Adams?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, you should get the book Clausewitz on war. That's a start.
Nah.
Development.
Burn the books. Either Adams read them or he hasn't. No. There's a more important story to tell. It's way more interesting than anything anybody wrote about. It's more about what happened than these people's ridiculous ideas. I mean, Bismarck wrecked the world, like wrecked it completely. And as the result of Versailles, the original corruption of the world can confirm. I'd forgotten that until today, actually. We're looking it up. It's odd that it came up again. But yeah, we were looking it up and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Versailles, the original corruption of the world, 2 treaties signed, 2 wars born, basically. Terrible for the world. Terrible.
So Versailles, are you talking about like King Louis XIV there, or are you talking about
the treaty?
So the construction of Versailles was just a disaster. Like is a bad.
You're not talking about the palace. You're talking about a particular treaty.
No. The construction of the palace was a bad idea, and every treaty signed at the palace has just been war.
Okay. Yeah. No. You hear wild stuff about Versailles and like, Louis XIV just arrogating kind of absolute power to himself, and basically like everything. Or is that something?
I don't buy that. I don't buy that. But the story, because Versailles is basically earthly bragging about your wealth, effectively, and then all these. So one of the things that happened, right, is Napoleon comes in and basically annihilates the Holy Roman Empire. Right,
that's right.
Flattens the world. Right. So like the Holy Roman Emperor had something like, I don't know, Father, is it 200 or it's over 100 titles? And when you understand why that is, you go, well, of course, Napoleon comes in, conquers way more territory, basically, and then declares himself emperor of everything. So he's got one title for every place he goes. This is a big problem, right? Because you flatten the hierarchy down. And then but what happens is the center of, we'll call it governmental power, or the power of Caesar, if you want to go biblical about it, changes from Rome to Paris. Right. So Napoleon moves the world control center from Rome to Paris. See, nobody knows this. It's not even obvious until you think about it, and you're like, oh yeah, that definitely all happened.
So
I would go even further. The problem with Napoleon. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
That's not the first time something like that's happened. Like Constantine went off and built Constantinople, and kind of, they tried to have like the 2 empires sort of thing, the Eastern Empire, the Western Empire, but that was never really all that tenable or successful as far as I could
tell. Didn't work. Right.
Well, Mark, what you got to understand, what you're just saying, you're talking about the ancient regime. I mean, you're talking about Louis XIV, 15, and 16. You're talking about a Catholic Europe, mostly. Oh, it was just before the Reformation. But the whole idea was hierarchy. Each one knew their station in life. So if you were born in the Middle Ages or later Middle Ages, you were born in a village and you did not venture more than 10 miles, 15 miles. And every day you hear the church bell, and you got married with a girl down the road or the next village up the road.
Yep.
And this was the stability. People call it the Dark Ages. I call it the Enlightened Ages. The birth of Enlightenment, which I think is a total disaster, including Napoleon. And I'm not going to be conspiratorial. I'm talking about 1771, the rise of Freemasonry, and the influence of Freemasonry had on Napoleon is wow. And I can give you a few books to read it. It's not conspiracy theory, and it's destruction of the hierarchy. And out of that, you get John Locke. You get all the Hume and all the philosophers, Voltaire, Montesquieu, etc., etc. And these people basically have introduced the Protestant, generally, I'm generalizing now, ethic, which is inverted thinking. I am the center.
Right.
That's the problem. And when you're the center, you want equality, fraternity.
No, that's the
1789.
Definitely.
The French Revolution.
Right,
and,
but the French,
and I am sort of, you got
to draw the line, though. You got to draw the line, because see, this is why everyone's confused, right? Because they look at the U.S. and they go, the U.S. is a product of Enlightenment thinking, and
of course it is.
That is effectively a lie. The U.S. is a product of Scottish Enlightenment thinking, not French Enlightenment. None of the French Enlightenment thinking got into this country,
because the Scotch Enlightenment was written in English and it was a lot easier to read.
No, it's nothing to do with that. It has to, but then you look at somebody like Bismarck. Now, Otto von Bismarck changed the world, right? Like, I mean, Napoleon did it first, basically, but like Bismarck was moving in the right direction, but he was specifically anti-Catholic. And that was actually the problem.
Prussian, that's right, yeah.
Well, but the the Prussians could have chosen
unified Germany's. There were 34 counties in Germany in 1861.
Yeah.
And the Russia and the Franco-Prussian War in Ruhr, he made Germany. So you get the southern part of Germany, Bavaria, remaining Catholic, and the northern industrial Germany becoming unified. And it's the age of nationalism. So you got all of these isms. You got the rise of communism.
Well,
that's
1480
the 1848 revolution.
That's all replacing
Karl Marx and Engels
the religion.
And all that. You got to put it in a. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right, but that's replacing the religion, right? The religion shatters.
The religion was the evil of all things, and so Bismarck, I put in that cat. All the philosophers. I'm talking about John Locke, Montesquieu, Voltaire hated the Catholic Church with a passion. If you read his social contract, social contract. I've got it here. If you want to have a look at it. It is a atheistic attack. First sentence is men are created equal. Equality. This is all of these modern jargon buzzwords which we are suffering the consequences of. Feminism, you name it, emanate from those sort of ideas. I'm talking 300 or 400 years, but anyway.
But I was curious, Jim, if you would include in those philosophers who you think have this Protestant ethos, would you include the existentialists like Nietzsche and Heidegger in that Protestant ethos?
Well, they're nihilists, as you know. I mean, Nietzsche thus spoke Zarathustra, or on all of those books which I have. I'm actually reading it. Just hold on.
But they're all Protestants, so of course.
Well, Heidegger was raised in the Roman Catholic Church.
Apparently, it didn't get into him deeply enough. Okay.
I mean, terrible book.
It's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned I'm rereading a book, but anyway, it is convoluted and complicated.
In bad philosophy. Like I don't.
My passion is history, modern history, basically European modern history,
but
and
like
literature. I've majored in that.
But why is anybody confused about this, right? So you got a guy like Heidegger. He's just the most obvious example, but actually Nietzsche serves just as well. Look at the outcomes of reading their philosophy, right? Well, if that's the outcome, then it's a bad philosophy. It's not really that hard to figure out. Heidegger becomes a Nazi. Maybe his philosophy leads to Nazism, since it does.
Or at least it leaves you weak to
it leads directly to no.
Okay, I've never read it. Mark. Why would I want those outcomes?
Directly, exactly. But Nietzsche's the same way. This isn't that hard. They're obviously bad philosophers.
Define Nazism. It's a buzzword. Go and tell me. 2025 interpretation. Retrospectively look at history and don't define it in our modern 21st century 2025 terms. What's Nazism?
No, all the so-called modern philosophers, and there are no philosophers after Aristotle.
No, I'm asking the definition. You mentioned it leads to Nazism. What does that mean?
I'm going to make a broader case, Jim. All the philosophers past Aristotle, every single person who wrote past Aristotle, all of them that we call philosophers are not philosophers, and their entire thesis is based from a personal, private perspective out into the world, with them at the center. Every single one of them. And that should be obvious to anybody that actually has a reasonable reading comprehension. But apparently almost no one seems to, which is very disturbing.
For my Catholic listeners, Mark considers St. Thomas Aquinas to be primarily a theologian and not a philosopher. So.
Clearly a theologian. This is the trick.
If that's how he's using the words, then
they try to claim him as a philosopher to boost their idea of philosophy. They try to steal the theologians. They'll take that science does this all the time, right? They'll go, oh no, that's our guy. It's like that's not your guy. It's not your guy. He would have punched you out if you called him a philosopher. Not a philosopher. Philosophy is not a highbrow, well-respected thing until extraordinarily recently in time. No one.
When they started creating philosophy departments.
Yeah, well, they should all be abolished. Those people should be put in prison. If I were in charge, I'd put them all in prison. You're head of a philosophy department, straight to the gulags.
If you've got a degree in philosophy from a pontifical university, you get to wear blue trim on your cassock and on your beretta when you're in a academic procession, and it looks really sharp. Like Monsignor Lagitus's blue cassock, super sharp. Like
I like blue.
He did a good job on that. He also lectured on Plato and Aristotle primarily, so you make of that what it's worth.
But he's not heading up a university department on so-called philosophy. That's the difference.
No. Most university departments.
You can prove my thesis in 4 seconds. Just go look at anybody's interpretation of Plato's Cave. Okay, it's individualistic. What's Plato saying in Book 7 in the so-called parable of the cave or whatever?
That's right.
Right. What he's saying is you are born to a certain station of life. You would not like to be removed from it. If someone tried to remove you from it, and no one can, Plato's explicit about that. No one can do this. It's not possible, right? If somebody tried to remove you from it, you would protest. You would be in pain. It would suck. Eventually, you'd get all the way to the top. You'd get lonely. You'd try to go back, and the people that you wanted to be with would try to kill you. Okay? That's what Plato says. I don't know what these other people think they read. I know because I have a whole video with all the references from the book about what Plato's saying. Okay? These people are insane. If you read that way, there's something wrong with your head. Either your reading comprehension is very low, you're extraordinarily, ridiculously intellectually dishonest, or there's something else going on. Like maybe you're just stupid. I don't know. But like that, The whole point of Book 7, the entire purpose of Book 7, it's bookended, if you will, right? Like all the quote books or chapters in the book are. It's bookended with these two stories, and they play off each other in a certain way. And like the end story in Book 7 should tell you everything you need to, like, it's a parallel story, right? Just at a different layer. So that's all you need to know. Clearly, these philosophy departments that are mistraining people and miseducating them entirely on what the allegory of the cave says are completely obsessed with this from the individual out view, and Plato rejects it outright throughout the entire text of the Republic, the whole thing.
Because you cannot know what justice is just by looking at an individual. You have to look at it at the level of a city. And if you forget about that, then you will never understand anything past Book 1 of the Republic, because that's the very first thing that they talk about.
Yeah, not just from the perspective of an individual. I mean, he goes through great pains in the beginning to say, from the perspective of the individual, you can't understand justice. By projecting the perspective of two individuals, you can't understand justice. By abstracting that all the way out to a group of people, you still cannot understand justice, right? I mean, he lays the case out very clearly. And one of the cases for his outline of justice and the reason to understand it is, interestingly, which I find fascinating that everybody ignores this, forbidden knowledge. Actually forbidden knowledge. Like, that's one of the drivers of the manuscript, is the fact that forbidden knowledge exists, and therefore, right? And that informs the structure of the thing.
Somebody has to regulate who has access to the forbidden knowledge, who's allowed to share it. It's like we have this thing, and what are we going to do about it? So yeah, it's been a long time since I've read any of that.
There's a book club on the Texas Wisdom Community YouTube channel. You can watch us go through the whole thing.
Plato.
There's something up with your sound, Jim. We can't really hear you.
Oh, his mic isn't down.
Probably your mic.
Is it all right? But this is an interesting book, and this was the favorite of the Pope Paul II. He always read at night, apparently, one of his favorite books. There you are.
Yeah. No, it's Imitation of Christ is that one's a classic. You can get it basically for free now. Like, there's so many public domain translations that are available, but it gives you just nice little shots there.
Who's the author of it?
Thomas Kempis.
Kempis. Yeah. Was he a prominent theologian during like the medieval era?
So he was I think about 15th century. Yeah, 15th century. Right, and he was kind of reacting against some of the Rhineland mystics who were kind of like creating these really complicated conceptual frameworks with which to do your prayer life with. And if you're a giant nerd and you like that kind of stuff, then maybe you find it helpful, right?
I love that. Say that again. Giant nerd.
Well,
he wasn't into that, and he just gave like extremely direct and practical advice. Which the nice thing is that the Imitation of Christ ends up being very thin as a result. And his famous line from that is, "It's better to feel compunction than to know what it is." Now, if you've got both, and he says, if you do both, fine. Like, you're not going to get in trouble with that. But the actual doing is a little bit more important than the theory of this. And so his book became very popular, I think, in no small part because it was short and very direct and to the point and very bracing in all of that, and was filled with the spiritual wisdom that he had picked up in the monastery along the way. So,
sounds interesting.
Yeah, worth reading.
When you say Rhineland mystics, are you talking about like Meister Eckhart, Nicholas of Cusa types?
Yep.
I see. So like very apophatic theology.
A lot of words. You got to read a lot of words to get at what they're getting at. And I think it was Meister Eckhart who got in trouble because in one book he made a very long argument with the conclusion that God is nothing, and then went and made a very large argument, the conclusion that God is everything. And the Inquisition came and they just kind of asked him about it. And he's like, "Hey, if this is a problem, I'll just drop it." But I thought it was a good idea to write like that. So that's the kind of stuff you're dealing with there. And I think what he was going for is like you have to somehow hold both of those things in your head at the same time. And then when you realize that that's actually impossible, you just humble yourself before God and hopefully, I don't know. I've never actually read the book. I just read an account of it.
But basically, what he's saying in a nutshell, I suppose, is he understood the human nature and he studied human nature, and he said, our human nature depends totally, fully on God, and if you take the God out of the equation, your life basically does not have any or love of God. It's an empty futility or just equating it literally to animal without any soul. That's what he's getting. But his influence on Thomas More and Ignatius is tremendous, including Wolsey, John Wolsey. So his writing for the following 500-600 years in terms of theology was very influential. But it's interesting to note that John Paul II's favourite theological book was that there, a bit of a side issue.
Certainly no stranger to big, thick books that are super complicated. He happened to write a couple. His theological project to find points of compatibility between the phenomenologists and Catholic theology, which he did not do entirely uncritically. His entire doctoral thesis was about whether or not the religious thought of Max Weber could be a grounding for authentically Catholic anthropology, and he said no, it really can't. He kind of essentially reduces all religion to sensations and aesthetics. It doesn't have any room for actual doctrine that you can ground things on.
Well,
so
yeah, this is like a question I had for you, and I was curious to ask because I don't know too much about his specific relation to the Roman Catholic Church, but I know he was raised and baptized Catholic and talked about religion. Do you know what the relationship between Ludwig Wittgenstein and the Catholic Church's teachings are?
He's a modern philosopher.
Yeah, he. I don't remember enough from my my seminary to give an intelligent answer to that. Unfortunately, we haven't rushed out to adopt him, though. Just going to take our time and evaluate what he says. But he ultimately he seemed to be what? Let me see if I can remember this properly. Wittgenstein started off as like running around in like the Vienna circle and trying to relentlessly ground everything from the bottom up in pure proven logic, which was later proved to be entirely impossible, but never mind that. And then he had like a certain turning point where he kind of abandoned that and he seemed to start grasping more at a sort of knowledge that was not articulable, those sorts of things. So that seems to be like moving in the right direction, because those positivists were just the worst. Just awful. You can't do anything with them. So, but he didn't, he wasn't like all of this stuff in the academy. It really depends on who you're talking to, right? And that's where academic, siloing comes in. It's like, are you actually talking to the people who are writing in this field? Was he bothering with like Dietrich and Alice von Hildebrand and their work in Catholic personalism, which was trying to, take some of this, some of the Catholic teachings and apply it in a novel situation? It's like, well, if he wasn't talking to them in the academy, then there's not really like that fruitful interaction between them. So,
yeah.
So I don't know if there's much interaction at all, because he might not have been all that interested in seeing what the Catholics were up to, especially, after the wars. Who knows?
Yeah.
Could I ask a question? Just the question: what's going to happen to synod of synodalities? I mean,
maybe this would be
again. I'm an ignoramus. I like some input if you can put.
What if Pope Leo XIV was the Pope to once and for all define what the word synodality means?
Well,
what if that was his lasting contribution to the church? Because I still have a very I followed all of it, and I still just have like this very vague sense of like a constant procedure that doesn't result in everything. Like that's what it looks like to me. And if I'm proven wrong, then thanks be to God, something useful can happen and I don't have to be in charge of it. But it does seem to just be a word that describes kind of constant activity and patting each other on the back and feeling good about each other without really bearing much fruit, because I don't know anybody who's excited.
Well, there are two people who are excited or were or still are. Both of them are Jesuit and were close to Pope Francis. One is Father Marko Rupnik, the artist, from Slovenia, like Donald Trump's wife. And the other one is your American Father James Martin from US of A. And they were very, very pro synod of synodalities. My understanding, again, there's no definition as such, is having various groups and watering down the hierarchy of Catholic Church to its local level and input of the people, communities, including LGBTQ, feminists, etc., etc., etc. That's what I surmise. The aim of the whole thing is, in other words,
certainly with something that is so formless and undefined, you're going to have people who want to use it that way, because if it's formless and undefined, but people are doing things and making noise around it, like that's people are, well, hey, I'm just going to be the one who's in charge of this, and I'm going to be the one to use it as a platform for my ideas. You can watch my my video on intent versus implementation in Vatican II for an example of that happening. And maybe Mark, since I made that video for you, we could talk about it a little bit, although it was quite brief. So it's not surprising that would happen. But Jim, I took an oath twice upon taking the office of deacon and taking the office of priest upon myself for those responsibilities. Took an oath of fidelity to the Catholic Church, and one of the things is that I was going to submit myself to the ordinary and universal magisterium of the Catholic Church with religious submission of intellect and will. That's what I was going to do. And I've got all of this submission like chambered up. It's ready to go. All it needs is something for my intellect to understand and my will to follow. And like once I've got that, like we're just going to knock it straight out of the air, and I'll submit to it. But until they can actually tell me what it is, there's just nothing for me to shoot at, So
Exactly.
I'm just not going to worry about it until it becomes a problem for me. That's the only thing I can come up with. So anyway, maybe this should be the number 57 priority of the new Roman Pontiff is to fire whoever's been making all of the logos, because like they haven't come up with a good logo ever. All these logos for the various years and initiatives and that sort of thing, they're all just terrible.
What do you think would be the best one if you could come up with one?
Want it to just come up with a coat of arms, a medieval coat of arms for whatever it is that you're trying to promote, and give it a nice Latin title.
There you go.
It'll always look class. So the nice thing about medieval coats of arms is that they are so fabulously outdated that they have now become timeless.
Yeah, it's the return of the cultural cycle of like something going out of fad and then coming back.
Yeah, but it's so far out of God bless him, Archbishop Vigneron, Emeritus Archbishop of Detroit. He allowed the marketing people to talk him into like a modernized coat of arms that was made with the best marketing people that are like, daggone it all, now you got to update that every 20 years.
There we go.
Otherwise you're going to be stuck with a coat of arms straight out of the 2010s, and nobody does it like that anymore, and it looks so 2010s, right? And we don't think of it right that because it doesn't look outdated yet. But like the day is coming because these things, move around with the wind, So anyway, that would be my desire. One of my little desires, just as a personal favor to me, Your Holiness, would you please fire the logo people from the Dicastery for Communications? They have the biggest budget. Nobody knows what they're spending their money on. Like, just get rid of this person. And I bet you Castle would do it for free.
There you go.
If the Holy Father asked Castle to design a logo in the manner of a medieval coat of arms every time that they wanted to do something that they needed a logo for, Castle just do it. He'd be so honored to work for the Roman Pontiff for free.
There you go.
Ixnan's getting it. Ye old heraldry for the win.
Yes. Well, I did like your video, by the way, Father. I liked that you at least went into the difference between intent of, we'll say, the decree and the implementation, because that's one of those things people miss. Like, I was thinking of this earlier today, that everyone talks about intent, and I'm like, if you believe the road to hell is paved with good intentions, why would you think I, of all the people on the planet, would care about intent of anybody or anything at any time? I only care about the good.
It might be material for an apology. Like, hey, this did not go how I intended, and that's my fault because of X, Y, and Z.
Maybe. Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Intent, it's the least important thing ever.
Yeah. So, okay.
Mark, you probably hate defense lawyers.
What was that, Kirk? Your mic is very low when you first start speaking for some reason.
I don't know. It might be a problem on my phone's end. I was saying, Mark, I presume you're not the biggest fan of defense lawyers?
Of what?
Defense lawyers.
The fence lawyers.
Defense lawyers.
Defense. So defense attorney.
Attorneys should be shot on sight, except for Jim. I like him, but the rest of them can go.
Okay.
So well, Shakespeare said, "Kill all the lawyers and let's start the society all over again."
Well, we need to start our society all over again.
But can I tell you why there's a general hatred in front of lawyers and used car salesmen? I'll tell you. We sell three things which are intangible. One is long study, brains. One is lingo and time.
Yeah.
And that you can't feel it. You know there's a wind outside. You can't take a photo or paint the wind.
Yeah.
When you call a bricklayer, a plumber, an electrician, build a wall, change my lights, if he or she physically do the job and you pay him. But how do you? We operate here in Australia on 6-minute units. In America, you got the contingency fees, as you know. When a client comes, you got a lawyer-client agreement, and some of them operate usually about 1/3. If they win $1 million, the lawyer gets about $350,000, $400,000, or no win or whatever. I do a lot of pro bono work also, but that's the problem with lawyers. A lot of people say, "How dare you? What do you sell?" It's one word. For example, the meaning of the word "shall" in law is totally different than in normal lingo. And if you do something and use the wrong word in an agreement made between two people who are not trained, you're asking for trouble.
Well, but here, Jim, it's more two factors. One is the rampant corruption, not just with lawyers, but with judges. I mean, it's completely. I could tell you stories, but you absolutely could not believe
it's me. More political in America.
The more important factor is it's no longer a profession, and that's not just legal. Right. It's also like we don't have professions in this country anymore. They're gone because
join the club.
Professions are self-regulating. Right. They have regulatory bodies that actually do something. And I have been told, I've worked for attorneys in the U.S. Right. As a consultant. I've also consulted on cases, by the way, as an expert. But I've been told several times, do not under any circumstances ever report an attorney to the bar. Because you are asking for, you'll never be able to get an attorney where that bar association lives. And if any other attorneys, if anybody does a case against you and finds out you've reported to any bar in any state, they will use that. They will find a way to use that in a lawsuit, which is completely unethical, immoral, actually against the law, but no one enforces those laws. Every person that works in and around a court in the United States is a court officer, and they are required by oath, not just by law, by oath, to report illegal behavior, and they never do. They never do. They see it all the time, and they never report any of it. And it's like it's not a profession here anymore. It's too bad. That's too bad. It's very sad. That's why people don't like lawyers in the U.S.
Well, it used to be called the learned profession. Unfortunately, it's no longer so. I say to all the people, if you really detest or hate someone, tell him or her to study law.
Yeah.
If you really hate.
I'd say me up to study canon law under obedience.
Well, the church law is interesting. I've got a few books on that.
There's not nearly enough money in it to justify it. That's what
But I've got a really actually just hold on. There you are. The foundations of the common law, but the one which is very interesting is the emanates from the church law, Roman law, and then you get the civil law, which is the continental law. Then you get the common law, which is our law, Anglo-Saxon law. Which
is really interesting. Like, so last summer I took American law for canonists, which was literally just a fun course because none of it directly related to my canonical practice. And the thing that struck me is, in our canonical studies, we learn all about the canon law faculty at Bologna in the 12th century. We learn all about Gratian's decretals and like the great universities where like our canon law practice basically comes from, because it was, I say the oldest continuously functioning legal system in the world. And I do think it is true that there's a institutional hierarchical continuity to it, but the way it's actually done was like mostly an invention of the 12th century universities, and
absolutely.
But that it's that tie with the universities that I think is the most interesting difference between canon law and common law, because as far as I can tell, common law was basically judges coming up with everything.
You would love this. It's Christian Foundations of the Common Law United States. There you go. You can recognize that, and it's actually by.
It looks like they're making a pretty good constitution right there.
Yeah, and anyway, this is there are 3 volumes starting from England, Australia, and United States. But it's very interesting. It's looking at the Christian development or contribution to the law which we have today.
Yeah.
Then you get the Napoleonic. Oh, you mentioned Napoleon, and what did he do to the law? Anyway,
he wrecked everything. He wrecked everything.
Anyway,
and then Bismarck continued that wrecking along the same materialist lines with the level of certainty and precision that the Germans are known for. To be fair to the Germans, but also that materialism is right there in that era.
Look, Germans are so innovative people. They're, I think, not now, not this Germany, but I'm talking. They're a class above everyone else.
All our tech, Jim. All our tech, all of it. I just did a live stream on the myth of World War II and how that's ending. That's our main problem: is the myth of World War II is ending, and for better or for worse. I mean, mostly for better. But I actually looked it up. I did a little bit of research. Normally, I don't do that much research, but I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that the first patent for the transistor was from somebody from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, basically, or the Austrian Empire, right? So, technically speaking, actually every single piece of technology that we use is German. It's all from that region, all of it, every single bit of it. Nuclear power, all of it. It's all them.
It's interesting you mention, and one of the quirks a lot of people don't realize, at the end of Second World War, I'm talking 45, where the Russians were progressing, going towards Berlin, and Americans and British and French were running towards Berlin. You know what they were getting? They were actually kidnapping German scientists. And American did not put a man on the moon. It was von Braun.
Yeah, rockets, nuclear power,
and V1 and V2 rockets being bombarded and across to London. And then he utilized, and the Russians kidnapped, not stole.
Yeah.
That no trial, you go to Mother Russia. So the Russian technology, rocketry in particular, and the American, the Americans are our American scientists. No. They're German
American
Nazi scientists. No,
American engineers, German scientists.
Well, yeah.
But Jim, let me ask you.
But it's interesting. There's quite a few books on that. It's very inconvenient history, touchy history, but talking about race of literally kidnapping.
Yeah.
You go my way, the other one ends up in Russia, and that's what was happening in 45.
But what do you think of this, Jim? Because I got this whole thesis about part of the myth of World War II. They take something which previously was above the law, right? It was extrajudicial, right? And they raised the law up to apply, right, to it, which is the Nuremberg trials, right, which is war crimes.
Now you got me going. Now you got me going.
Well, that's a very equality doctrine, humanity frame, right? You have to believe in humanity, and you have to believe that because humanity, there are some universal human laws. And then, see, this is where it all goes wrong. I mean, I would argue there's three definitions of law, but there's two important ones, right? There's the law of, we'll say, God, and the law of man, and they're very different things in some ways. One's based on the other, I hope, right? The law of God emanates down upon you, and the law of man is informed from below, but emanates from above first, right? But what they've done is they've squished that into one thing and said all humans have a law of common human decency or some weird, you would know the history way better than I would on that. But then they apply the law in an inappropriate fashion to basically to armies. And like no one had ever done anything like that before. Like that's a ridiculous thing to do, right? There were just winners and losers, and at the level of the winner, they could basically do whatever they wanted to the losers, right? And now you've got this universal law being applied at Nuremberg, and well, no one knows how to do it, right? It's a complete mess by any standard. It's a complete catastrophe. But like to me, that's an inappropriate use of law. Entirely. Like laws should not apply outside of countries where they're agreed upon. Like that's ridiculous.
There are two things I've got to answer. I call the First World War and the Second World War as the first European Civil War and the second European Civil War.
Close.
Where the Catholics, Protestant, and Orthodox were literally at each other's throats. And literally diminishing each other. And there is a sort of a small replica of this where the brothers, Ukrainians and Russians, are continuing. Now, getting back to the Nuremberg trials, as you know, it all emanates from the United Nations. And United Nations, which is basis of international law, we might say, and I've got a few books here on international law, which is a joke. You've got to understand that the victors write history. So all of our victorious allies is slanted, and it's quite understandable. It's not objective history. There are certain forbidden histories which you cannot mention. It's too, veritas or truth sometimes really hurts. If you hear the news. So that's one of the I become very cynical. And when I'll tell you when I became cynical with Cardinal what's his name? George Pell. He's Australian, as you know, and he spent 4,000 days, nearly 3 or 4 years, innocent man. And I'm getting that book, by the way. I've ordered a biography of George Pell, the Cardinal, His Eminence Cardinal George Pell. It's a farce of justice. You've got this loony left. Anyway, I won't go into politics. And an innocent man, you don't have to be a judge or a lawyer or anything. And everybody knows that he's innocent. But, it's the elephant in the room, which really, and that silence, which really unnerves me. And makes me
if you really
sarcastic.
Want to throw the conspiracy theory on it, remember that he was the one that Pope Francis put in charge of reforming the Roman Curia's finances.
Yeah, and I want to mention the other cardinal who was the Italian cardinal. It was there was a bit of a rift there between them two.
Yeah.
Anyway, involved with allegedly involved with. Siphoning money. Anyway, I won't go there.
But we don't have the receipts yet for that one. But it's man,
just a suspicion and allegation. Absolutely. I'm
pray for
again.
Polio.
I reiterate, I'm still up for adoption. All right. If you want, any of you boys want to adopt me, here I am. All right. I'm coming to America. I'm so happy. Preferably in Chicago. Never been there. Never been to America, mainly in America. Now, what's there's a talk about Chicago Cubs and Red Sox, I think. What's the
Red Sox.
rivalry?
Yeah, so it's baseball teams.
Yeah, I know that.
And they're two very old baseball teams there, and they're both in Chicago. And there's certain.
Babe Ruth used to play for one of them, didn't he?
No, he was a New York Yankee. So this is the way. This is the way that it normally goes. Is in a city like New York, you've got the classic teams. You've got the Yankees. You've got the Giants. You've got the Knicks. And then you've also got kind of three lame teams: the Mets, the Nets, and the Jets. And they all of their names kind of rhyme, and they're kind of like the second team in New York. And you can go ahead and root for them, but they're the second teams there, but not so as far as I can tell in Chicago. Even though the White Sox have been horrible recently, like they're not a second team. There's a really fierce crosstown rivalry there, and so when the news reporters are going out and reporting that the new pope is a Cubs fan, like his brothers kind of took that personally. Like they know how important that is. You get these details.
Corrected them. He said, no.
No. He's a White Sox fan. Yeah, I think one of them's American League and one of them's National League, which is not something I'm going to have on the top of my head. Which one is which? So yeah, it was actually, this was kind of like the surreal, it's really happening moment for me. Is the first one was finding out that he's a White Sox fan, right? It's like, oh, okay. So now it's getting kind of real. The second one was hearing him very, very briefly address the College of Cardinals in English, and it wasn't English with a German accent. It wasn't English with a Polish or an Italian accent. It wasn't a little bit of garbled English with a Spanish accent. It was like, oh, that's somebody from Chicago right there. It's not like super thick and obnoxious, but it's like,
yeah,
right.
Just wild. What a time to be alive.
I mean, people relate to people who come from similar things as them.
Yeah, and so that's why we're all very happy to have an American Pope all of a sudden.
Well, American Catholics are, but Mark and I are not members of the Roman Catholic Church.
Sure, yeah. Me and Jim, I guess that's what I meant. But if I'm happy, then Mark will be happy. That's how he relates.
Well, I'm happy that you're happy, Father.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. If I'm excited and I like this guy, then Mark will probably also like him because he's practicing a little bit of distributed cognition, and he knows that I follow these things and I'll like pay attention to them and keep him up to date if he knows to know anything. So
there we go.
So I thought, Mark, I thought you were Catholic. You're not Catholic.
Nope.
Right.
I was not raised any kind of religion at all.
Although we think he might have been baptized Catholic.
That's possible.
Well, you're saved.
Yeah.
At least you're saved.
I have no idea, Jim. I actually don't know. I'd have
right there. You can't know for sure if you're saved, except with a special revelation from God. So
yeah,
you can have like a pretty good sense of peace, like things are going in the right direction. But anyway,
Mark,
yeah.
There's still hope. Don't worry, mate. No worries. There's a lot of time. All right.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, one thing also that's going to be interesting to see is if there is a second schism in the Roman Catholic Church.
I hope not.
A second one. I think we got to that by about the 5th century.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
So we're on a third now. cusp.
Well, yeah.
But I hope not. I hope not.
We've had schisms inside the United States, you know.
Well, I don't know specifically about the history of that, but if we are on a third or however many schism of the Roman Catholic Church, if it's a global schism, then I wonder.
1054 is the Roman and the Constantinople. Then you get a Martin Luther, 1541, I think. And that's the Protestant one, which is the biggest one. And
those are the two big ones.
Big ones, yeah.
Does Martin Luther count? Because Martin Luther was coming out of the church and not creating his own church.
Well, he ended up, by his actions, creating a whole bunch of churches, even if he had never actually intended to do so. And frankly, the Orthodox didn't really intend to do it. So, we would define schism as a sin against charity and a sin against unity and obstinate and consistent and persistent refusal to submit to legitimate church hierarchy, including the Roman Pontiff, probably most pertinently the Roman Pontiff, although I could go in schism from my bishop, but since he's in communion with the Roman Pontiff, then both would happen at the same time. Anyway, you were thinking about a third schism. This guy doesn't seem like the guy who's going to cause a schism to me.
Absolutely.
I think they specifically picked a guy who had spent his career with his nose in the grindstone, making things work. Like, as far as I can tell, and I've been wrong before, that's who they picked. They picked a guy who just like kept his nose down and worked hard and did it, hopefully did a good job. And that's not usually schism material right there. You know?
I agree, but his political commentary on some things has made me wonder if the conservatives in the church are considering some things.
No. You okay? All right. I'll be nice about it. You don't understand priorities of me and somebody like me, right? Like, my big question when he went out on the balcony is, what does this guy think of the Latin Mass? Right? And I bet you Jim, because him and I, we have a fair number of opinions in common. I bet you he was thinking along the same lines, right?
Absolutely.
Because
and the attire.
Canon law, right? The Pope can actually do something about the Latin Mass. The only reason why we no longer have it at the cathedral in Fargo, where we're squeezed into the Shanley High School Catholic school chapel, is because Traditionis Custodes forbade having the Latin Mass in parish churches. And when we asked for a dispensation, the Pope's representatives said, no, you can't have it in the cathedral. You have to have it someplace else, right? So that is an issue, right? The actions of the Pope ended up directly affecting me. So that's what I'm thinking about, right? Now, Pope Francis has been, he spent 12 years constantly on one side, we could say, of the migration issue. And he frequently spoke about these things, right? And regardless, of what I might think about that particular issue, it never really registered with me because he doesn't control the borders of his own country, right? Like, that's all a deal he makes with the Italian city-state.
Right.
He doesn't. So he can speak an awful lot about that. And even if I think he's just way off board, which I don't think he will be, I think people are reading a little more too much into this this Twitter feed than is really appropriate. And it's actually an interesting litmus test to see who's paying more attention to Twitter than to anything else. So, gotcha.
I don't use
that's not something we would. I can't imagine anybody schisming over that. Like, it is such like a tertiary issue. The only people who would be even irritated by it are people who are really already super plugged into Twitter, and they're irritated by everything. So, maybe you don't worry about what they think.
Well, it's also it's a little strange. So, like Sarah, for example, who was raised very Catholic, went to Catholic Bishop Girton High School, actually. She was like, well, I read the J.D. Vance dust up with the Pope, and like J.D. Vance is clearly wrong, and I agree with the Pope. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that J.D. Vance used the wrong word, because there's no way that J.D. Vance ever went to a Catholic church and came to the conclusion that love was ordered. That's not a thing, right? He clearly meant duty, right? And just used the wrong word. Or he meant duty and used the word love because he was being sloppy, not because any Catholic thinks loves are ordered.
Here's a theological text, but no, sorry, secunda. So there's actually a article in the Summa about the order of charity, right?
Right, the order of charity.
Here,
absolutely.
Yeah, right. But the thing is that like it's sort of like talking about Catholic social teaching, right? Catholic social teaching is always general and abstract, right? It's like, here are what we think thought through are some good principles around which you princes and I suppose voters should be thinking about, right? And that's a fine thing for the church to do. You know, it was Leo the 13th who wrote the first social doctrine encyclical on there, but that's always abstract things, right? And it's like somebody has to make a judgment on what they're going to do in this particular situation. If so we'll take like the classic, a father of a family has to see to the needs of his own children before other people's children, right? And that's like, so it's a kind of duty there, right?
That's a duty, right?
Yeah. So it's always one of these things that are mediated in the way he's talking about it, mediated by the virtue of prudence by people who have responsibility, right? So to act like it's as simple as, so he kind of spoke poorly there, and maybe didn't implement some of the church's doctrine with a clean way, because it's always
used the wrong word. That's actually all that happened. Had he used the word charity or duty, he would have been completely correct. But also, like I said, like our idea of politics in the United States is about the dumbest conception you could have of the term, right? And likewise, like our idea of how quote power works is completely backwards, right? Like everywhere else in the world, everyone pretty much knows there's no contest between the governance authority and the authority of the church. Like there isn't. Like the church is always above it, and so you can't say like, well, some political leader disagrees with the Pope, therefore there'll be a schism. That is insane and ridiculous. Even in the U.S., it's ridiculous. But I know why a lot of people in the U.S. don't, because we have this warped idea of politics and this warped idea of power, and so it like all the kings used to be crowned until Napoleon, Jim. All the kings were crowned by the bishops, right? And it was Napoleon who grabbed the crown from the bishop and crowned himself and forced them to watch, right?
Notre Dame.
Yeah, he broke everything. But that's very recent. Very recent.
If I can be just going back, what Father said before, talking about social teachings and justice and the extremities which has been noted in South America in particular, and was introduced by the Jesuits. Father
it was introduced by the KGB, but never mind.
There's Martin. I've got the Malachi and all that books. I'm fully aware of that. Martin Malachi and all that, the Jesuits and the Vatican. I've read them, and it's over there. But I'm getting at Father Arupe, which is a general of the Jesuits. He was in Japan, and Father Kloenbach, the Dutch superior general of the Jesuits, had incredible, they had good meanings of Catholic social teaching. However, it has been taken to the extreme, in my personal view. Maybe I'm
also
totally wrong. In South America,
yeah.
One of the things that the Jesuits did good, a lot of people don't realize, they took their frock and they identified with the peasants and the non-democratic governments, the tradition of South America, like, you know, Perón's in Argentina, Pinochet's and various other, Brazil and Chile, etc., etc. And the extreme of no middle class, either the opulent rich and the very, very poor minority peasants. And they've actually lived and suffered and did incredible service. But you cannot, and that mentality in 2025 or the last 12 years, if that's I'm not speaking ill of our late Pope Francis, but which really disturbed me, really did, is taking that sort of, you know, humble idea, becoming woke, not living in his apartments designated, being sort of off the people, but very bombastic in his behavior at the same time. It wasn't very charismatic, and the synodalities and all of that, being ambiguous. Who, you know, the famous thing which I think mentioned before, talking about homosexuality in the Catholic Church, and on that famous plane trip, he said, "Who am I to judge?" I mean, that's ambiguous. You know, that sort of, hello, it's disturbing to me. To the church, that's my view. Again, and what I see with this Pope, the American one, I'm so optimistic. I'm thus far, I think he's the peacemaker, and he's sort of getting all the Catholics together, which I think will be. And you know, he's young, he's 69, 70, so he's going to be a long pontificate, I hope so, and productive. I'll shut up.
And if we had a general election, we never would have picked him. So, hey, looks like the conclave works.
Ted, I miss you, man. Where you been? How you been? You okay?
Yeah, I've just been, you know.
Oh, you're basically impossible to understand. I'm sorry. There's something.
Bad mic. Bad mic.
Did that work? Hold on a sec.
That's better. That's better.
Here we go.
Slightly better.
Yeah, I just did the AirPods. Yeah, you know, 5 kids, busy parish life, building houses, cutting down trees. You know, it's full. So.
Where's Convivium 2, man? Where's Convivium 2? I'm ready to drive out there.
I know. The problem is like I'm running a business now, and so a lot of like the sort of administrative stuff, which never has come very naturally to me, is just like it's all in my sort of work vocation right now. So.
Yeah. Every time that you're not here on a Monday night, I just assume that you're actually doing something useful. So I never resent you for it.
Then I have to fill your shoes, Ted, and I can't do
it. Father Eric continues to be a model of charity. No. Just been really lot of on the ground life. So. But
you had another kid, apparently.
Yes, yeah, we had a baby girl last summer. She's fabulous. We love her. She's decided that she's going to catch up with all of her siblings as quickly as possible, and so she's like 3 or 4 months ahead of all of her other siblings on mobility and stuff, and just, you know, wants to be part of life, and she's really good at it. So. It's great. Our oldest was recently received First Holy Communion, which was, you know, as a father, it's a pretty tremendous step. Makes it very real. You know, you've got another person, rational soul under your care that's choosing to live the same life as you and your wife have chosen. Just makes it all feel very, like. Like it's not the same as like a friend following up on what? Look at this. Oh my goodness.
I saw Ted join and I was like, I mean, I wanted to join anyway and talk, but I don't know anything about the Catholic Church.
Convivium reunion. I love it.
Yeah,
I know, this is great.
So hey Jess. Yeah. Anyway, so it's been good. And then, just I don't know, feeling a lot of the weight of being in charge of people, which is, makes you just feel how inadequate you are and how important all of your habits are. Because when you have to take care of people, you don't have time to deliberate on most decisions. It's just whatever's in there comes out. That's definitely been a big realization recently of, you want to deal with those habits as much as you can, get them oriented towards God, because if you don't, you and everyone else.
Fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah, you better follow that heart up with something good.
No, the key to good management is good beatings. That's it. It's that easy.
Wow, Mark, I will not pass that one on to my children. Oh man, yeah. But I just came on because you guys were talking about our new pontiff, and it's.
You have anything to regale us with? We're all very happy.
I'm also likewise happy, and I think that he needs our prayers. I think he's stepped into the most spiritually challenging position in the cosmos, because he has an unspeakable amount of responsibility, and he has not yet made it to eternity, and so he's still very capable of sinning, and so he really, really needs our prayers.
One of the most amazing things about the papacy is, as far as I'm concerned, the most important job that he has is to be that visible sign of unity for the Catholics around the whole world. We all point at him and say, well, that's our father right there,
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that most important job is you just kind of do that passively. Like, it was like he walks out, he accepts election and walks out onto the balcony, mission accomplished. Right?
Yeah.
Like we can all just like, yep, that's the guy right there. He always comes out of that balcony wearing white. He's our guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's a specific equivalent in like other religions, but like it's like when you it's sort of like if you have, let's say you go to a university and there's like a famous professor there, and when you see that professor, let's say they're giving a testimony before Congress, and let's say you attended their class in college, it's like, well, that's like my guy there, kind of, but in a deeper spiritual sense.
Yeah. But no, I have nothing to regale about Pope Leo. In fact, I've been trying to be disciplined and like not like digging in that much, because for one thing, right, he's got the job for life. So I assume probably he's going to be the pontiff when I start having grandchildren. Good chances of that, considering the modern medical system. And so just really trying to again realize that my relationship to him is one of prayer. And so what I decide about him right now doesn't matter. I'm certainly very hopeful, and I think there's lots of things that in my list of things that I'd like to see from it is very short, namely that he just wouldn't restrict the Latin Mass and that he would be Catholic. Those are, if he can do those two things, I'm going to be thrilled. Seriously, that's it. Just I don't even need him to promote the Latin Mass. I'm let's just not restrict it, and let's just actually be Catholic. But yeah, I think he has a nice singing voice.
Always nice. Always nice. Never say no to that.
Yeah, it's great. One of our priests here has a fantastic voice, and is it necessary? No. Is it nice? It's really nice. So yeah, I'm excited. It's also just been an interesting it's an interesting transition, and speaking of the unity of the Pope, it was weird in the that when the seat was vacant, realizing how often I was already praying for the Pope throughout the day and at Mass, and it's kind of every time I hit that, when there was no one on the throne, I was like, oh, wow, okay, what do I say here? I should probably pray for the College of Cardinals, and you bump along, but realizing even then, just how tightly that that whole relationship is interwoven all the way up and down. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess at the Latin Mass you wouldn't hear it, but I said Francis a few times on accident because it's really hard to remember.
Father, can I ask a question, maybe a silly question? What is the situation now with the new Pope and sedevacantists, SSPX?
Well, that's why I just don't. So the SSPX are not sedevacantists.
Yeah,
that's always been against their doctrine.
Right.
Because, man, you're just going to break the whole daggone thing.
Right? I haven't heard any news. I don't know what, they were.
Yeah,
adamant,
right. So like all of these people who are running around, like let's imagine 2 years from now, right? Pope Leo's been great. Everybody's just super thrilled. Loosened restrictions on the Latin Mass. His Wednesday audiences have just been one success after another. People are tuning into him on YouTube. Our OCIA classes are full. Are you still going to be one of those guys that said that Benedict's resignation was invalid? Like, you say, you know what? I'm sorry. The internet made me kind of insane in those days, and I am actually just happy to not have these opinions anymore because, like once you've got like the invalid election, well, okay, then like the cardinals he appoints, and like I know that we could use Canon 144 and Ecclesia Supplet in cases of common and probable doubt that the church would supply the faculties, and like we'd probably be able to fix it canonically, but golly, it sure would be a mess. And so I think that those people just don't realize how big a mess they're making when they introduce all of this doubt in there about, because like once you break the system, I don't know how you would fix it. It's just it's pretty it's just you've created a mess to end all messes. So I don't worry about what those people say because they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, and the SSPX is, going to a fraternity parish where they're like the yin and the yang of the SSPX, where we're sort of like there to just be like, hey, if you want to come on back and like really be canonically regular, go to the fraternity parish. But like,
if they're close to each other, it's like, okay, why are you going to the SSPX?
Yeah. Exactly. Couldn't make another 30. Couldn't justify 30 more minutes in the car on Sunday, huh? But I know that there are some like crazy radical SSPX splinter groups that are more sedevacantist leaning, but I really think that like the majority, the SSPX is, and I don't even know what their internal structure is because again, they're really not totally in a normal. They're not in a normal position, that's for sure. But anyway, I think they would like to just be like part of the church. Like I think that they would. Like I think that if Pope Leo said, "We want to make you canonically regular," and incarnate all of your priests and all that.
It's here's the sticking point. Here's the sticking point. The entire justification for their existence is that state of emergency.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure they're just like, hey, listen, like we'll let you dissent from Dignitatis Humanae. You'll have guaranteed access to the Latin Mass. You could say whatever you want about ecumenism and interreligious dialogue. We won't bother you on those things. But you got to drop this state of emergency business because we can't have good church governance where anybody can just at any point declare a state of emergency and now be free of ecclesiastical governance, right? It's like, and like I don't know. That was my game plan. Is I'd give them everything they could possibly want if they would just drop the state of emergency business, because you can't run a church like that. And I don't know if they would take it.
Well, I mean, Father Eric, if you're willing to go with the lowercase c, you can certainly run a church with a state of emergency. It's like an American tradition to run a church like that.
True. Very Protestant, yes.
When did we admit the state of the urgency to the Union? Doesn't that need to be an act of Congress?
Well, Jess, how's KC?
Dude, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
I'm sure
My
that-
oldest son is graduating high school here in about a week. So
My understanding
I
is
had no idea you had children that old.
yeah, 18, 17, and 13.
Wow.
Yeah, and what, like last year they were what, 6, 9, and 10? Is that right? Last year,
Just
two
about.
years ago.
Looks like I'm the only grandfather here, eh? 4 kids.
Yeah.
Kirk's got a grandfather. That's
Well, I am.
mathematically impossible.
Well, father beats us. He's got spiritual kids and spiritual grandkids, probably spiritual great grandkids, don't you, Father? I mean, I'm sure you've got.
I guess I don't know how you calculate that.
I don't know if you calculate it by generations or by conversions. So
what I would need to do is I would need to bring somebody into the church, and then they raise their kids in the church.
Yeah.
Like that's the way. That's the only way I can. So I haven't gotten to like great grandchildren yet. I'm still young, but like that's coming. That's coming. No problem. I have brought people into the church before, so
there you go. Well, that's wild. Jess, I love that we just continue to be shocked at the passage of time, given the fact that it's like the most fundamental part of our experience, and yet somehow like we're always just totally astonished that people get older and things change. Like, man, I didn't expect it. What did you expect?
I don't know, man.
I wonder
It's interesting. It's interesting to note, from speaking from outside America, from Australia and the world, everybody thought that an American Pope or Cardinal had Buckley's chance of being elected a Pope. And then guess what? We've got an American Pope.
I don't think they think of him as an American, right?
Yeah,
so like we're looking at him, they're looking at him, and we're like, oh man, this guy eats crazy hot dogs and votes for the roots for the White Sox, But they look at him and it's like, okay, this guy was like a bishop in Peru for 10 years, missionary there for longer, and then had a stint, probably a 12-year stint as the head of the Augustinian order, which meant he was probably based in Rome. So, like, this guy's barely spent time in the United States in the past 30 years. So they don't really think of him because, like, Americans are like Donald Trump and Cardinal Dolan. He's not like that at all.
Yeah, we don't do a good job anymore of understanding other perspectives. Like I said, our idea of politics and the European idea of politics has nothing in common. Right. I mean, that's how far off we are. And like, well, like even over here, I tell people all the time, they're like, oh yeah, the right over in Europe is winning elections. And I'm like, there's no right wing in Europe. By US standards, there are 0 right wing people in other countries. We are the only country with right wing people because the UK doesn't have right wingers anymore. They haven't for decades.
To be fair, in Eastern Europe, parts of Eastern Europe, like Poland, they have people who in America would generally be considered on the right.
That's possible, but nobody in the United States knows anything about Eastern Europe. To be fair to our ignorance, like nothing, 0 things. It's not even.
You've just defined an average American for me.
It's true.
Ignoramuses. I'm not trying to be personal.
We're not trying to be personal. In the myth of World War II, and our particular version is lame because,
I know. I'm just joking.
No, it's true. It's true, Jem. It's true. It's true. But there are other disadvantages to like the UK is completely correct.
Ignorance is bliss. How about that?
True.
We're ignorant of what our government's up to in other countries.
No. When you're talking about right and left wing, I don't think it is appropriate to talk about Western Europe. In other words, the NATO countries. Eastern Europe, like Hungary, like Poland, Ukraine, and various other former USSR countries, they're still nationalists, and they can be nationalists because the religion or the ethos and culture is still uncorrupted, if I can use that word, by the open border internationalists, and I call them globo homo, who are trying to flatten and take the not borders, taking the cultures out of the whole world. In other words, that's what's happening in Australia and America and Western Europe. And the whole war in Ukraine is to have your McDonald's and KFC in Kiev. That's it's all about money. Follow the money. As the saying goes, money talks, bullshit walks.
Well, I think part of it's money. Part of it's also the fact that cultural Marxism in Western Europe and America is more prominent.
Dominant, yeah.
Well, Eastern Europe,
good old Frankfurt School. Good old Frankfurt School made sure of that,
I think we made it past peak woke in 2022.
Yeah.
But
sometime around there. I might not have it perfect, but I'm not saying it's not. But
it depends how you define it. I mean, now it's just the myth of World War II breaking down, and you're hearing a lot of the myth of World War II stuff now. I got
this was fascinating. This was fascinating. Talking to some younger seminarians, right? And one of them had never seen Star Wars before, so all the other guys made him watch Star Wars, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I fell asleep and then I woke up and the Death Star blew up." Like that really, it wasn't a gripping story for him, the ragtag group of rebels versus the very well-dressed white men.
Right.
It didn't grab him the way that it even grabbed people. And I'm not that much older than this guy is, but something's gone and shifted,
It's all shifted, and you're hearing more talk about it. Pageau did a video on it. It's a subscribers only video, but I got my video up before he did. So I've actually reached out to him to talk to him about it because I think the Canadian perspective would be fascinating because they just have a different, even though they're here, roughly speaking, they have a completely different view on the second act of the Great War, Jim. That's the right way to think about it.
Well, when you say second,
you're talking about the son of Castro in Canada.
Well, just the whole view that Canadians have on the world is very different from the view some better, some worse. Right.
Well, here in Australia, as you probably know, the Labor Party just won, and the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, he's an old boy of my school. I'm not proud of it. By the way,
I'm sorry to hear that, Jim.
He's 3 years behind me. I know him. In my school, St. Mary's Cathedral, where Christian brothers. I was educated by Edmund Rice, the Irish brothers. So I all know about the Easter uprising. All right, 1916, and they've drummed that into us in Latin. In those days, when I went to school, 85% of teachers were Christian brothers in their cassocks, black. So Father Eric reminds me of those good old days. But anyway, these days, there's not many in teaching, I think one or two. It's all lay teachers, unfortunately. But we were talking about the left-wing politics of Australia. It's just... Anyway, I'm not one to bore you with it.
Oh, I just want to know if Father's been breaking out the cassock at all recently.
I wear it the same time that I always wear it, and that's on feast days, solemnities, and any day when it's actually just convenient to wear it. And so I wear it a fair bit now that I'm bishop secretary, right? And I'm chasing the bishop around and carrying his bags and all that sort of thing because. I show up and I've got to get all this stuff ready in 25 minutes. And it's way easier to just I've got this ultra durable surplus that can survive a nuclear war. So I just pull that out of the bag, throw that on, and I'm ready to process in. So that's the first thing I do when I show up so I don't have to worry about it. which means, I just have my cassock on anytime I'm traveling with the bishop and I'm going to MC a mass for him. So, which is a lot this time of year because it's confirmation season and we've got 25 down, 4 to go. So, yeah, we're getting near the finish line on that.
I can tell you, in relation to all the other things we've been talking about, as a parishioner, it's like just the best when you go into Home Depot and there's your priest walking through Home Depot in a cassock, and he's like, "You have a blessing," and then like you realize, like, yes, he wants you to kneel down in Home Depot to receive his priestly blessing. It's like that's just if you want to talk about how to get through like the modern era into something better. That's the way.
I'm aware. Every time I wear my cassock outside of a church institution, I can just see people staring. Right, so like, go to the bar wearing that. It's classy bars, right? Not some place that's trash. Everybody gets an eyeful there, grocery stores, McDonald's, Walmart. It's just like, and I just every time I get out of the car, I'm like, okay, big chest, I belong here. Just I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
One of my friends, his oldest brother is a priest in the diocese of Tulsa, and his sister's in a religious order in Cincinnati. He says like whenever his brother goes to visit, and they're like him and the two of them were trying to go out somewhere. He's like, they literally can't make it 2 blocks in the afternoon because it's like here's a priest in a cassock and a nun, and people are like just like iron filing to the magnet, and it takes them 2 hours to walk 2 city blocks.
which is a really American thing.
Yeah.
You go to Rome and it's like there's priests and Catholics and sisters everywhere, right? And it's like, the show doesn't stop until the cardinal shows up. Like those are the only people that anybody pays attention to. Like,
but we're at the edge of the world here, right? Like this is the end of the earth. Yeah. Mid-America is the ends of the earth. So
yeah.
No, it's not. I beg to differ. It's Australia.
Well, you're the bottom of the earth.
No. One of our former prime ministers, what's his name? I forget his. Paul Keating. There you are. You know what he's called Australia? The arse end of the world. There you are. He actually said that. Google it.
There's some national pride right there.
It seems like the sort of thing that a descendant of convicts would say.
Oh yeah. Paul is Irish. Paul Keating, former prime minister. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that's fun. Well, gentlemen, the arrival of old friend has extended my bedtime, but such things cannot last indefinitely.
That's power right there.
It was
very enjoyable.
Dark outside. And rational creatures would go to bed under such circumstances. But it was good to see you, Jess and Ted, and pray for the Pope, pray for each other, pray for me. Good night, and God bless you all.
God bless. See you later.